below it and everything above it as well, going all the way back to Roman and medieval law. So they figured we can't sell the land, we'll just sell the air. And that's pretty much what they do. They sell or lease the rights to the air above the train tracks, keeps the trains moving, they get a spot for a shiny new building and some extra revenue. So the issue you run into there is that if you have trains running under your building like this, you're not really left with a whole lot of space for anything else, like a traditional foundation, basement. So they have to hold the building up some other way, find a different support structure. And what they use instead are these big steel reinforced concrete pillars called caissons. They line them up along either side of the train tracks and then drive them deep down into the ground, sometimes all the way down to the bedrock, which in Chicago is about 150 feet. Because again, this place is a big swamp, you gotta get past all that marshy, muddy goodness of the solid limestone below. So those pillars driven deep into the earth are what's holding up this building and most of the others along this part of the river as we get closer to Union Station. Though there is a pretty notable exception. The exception is the southwest corner of the building, the shorter bit here, because partway through construction, they realized that this southwest corner was going to end up right on top of the track switching mechanism where the train tracks all get jammed right up against each other. Well, no space between the tracks means nowhere to put the caisson, it's got to come up with something else. So this southwest corner is actually just kind of floating above the train tracks. There is no support structure whatsoever under this part of the building. It's just kind of hanging there, actually suspended from above instead of supported from below. What makes that possible is that on top of the southwest corner is a steel truss cantilevering system that is taking the weight of that section and redistributing it back to that main tower. So think like a giant diving board as far as physics and stuff goes. What's even more impressive, I think, is that all these pillars along the side were added after the building was totally finished, just to make people feel safer. They're not doing anything, those are non-functional columns, they're just there for looks, just for to get make people feel a little more, oh, that looks normal. That was a truck. Or a bus. If you look back up though, once you're out from under the bridge, you'll see what's doing all the work there. There is that steel truss system that is redistributing the weight, suspending that piece of the building, and looking kind of nice at the same time. Over to the right, another Art Deco building. This is number 2 North Riverside Plaza by Hullibert and Root, finished 1929. Art Deco again. Very angular industrial look, bold lines, sharp angles, repetitive details, setbacks. And in addition to being a lovely Art Deco building, this was also the first air rights building built in the city. So 1929, not a super new technique that. This was originally the headquarters of the Chicago Daily News, so some of these carvings or reliefs we see actually depict important people and events from the history of journalism, kind of let people know what's happening on the inside of the building. All these styles, though, are related. Think evolutionary building cycle. If we go back and start over again with that Beaux-Arts style. Ornate, neoclassical. Stretch it out a bit, straighten out some of the swirly lines, sharpen the angles to get something similar to Art Deco there. Take Art Deco, add a little more verticality, bigger windows, that 3-part structure, you get that Chicago school style we saw. And take Chicago school, strip away the ornamentation and that masonry cladding, you're left with basically a frame and some windows, which looks an awful lot like modernism again. Over to the right, so pretty logical progression, as you can see. And along this part of the river around Union Station, we have a series of 4 buildings called Gateway Center that show us the progression from modernism to post-modernism. They're all air rights buildings. You can see the trains there, and they were all designed by the same company, same firm, Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. That's Gateway 1, we're passing now. Gateway 2 coming up across the street, and they are identical twins. Both built in the mid-late 60s, a couple years apart, both very clearly modernist in design. And again, modernism equals minimalism, plain, utilitarian, steel and glass boxes. Not super exciting, right? Moving forward a bit through the 70s and across the street, we have Gateway number 3. Similar, right? Plain, simple, box shape, a little taller, right? What we're not seeing here anymore is that steel frame. It's still there, we're just covering it up again like we did with the masonry-clad steel frame with the Chicago school style, and that moves us just a little bit beyond that less is more kind of mindset. We're just using concrete instead of stone or masonry this time. So Gateway 3 here is basically a baby step. It's a midpoint between modernism and postmodernism. Because it's a little further, not all the way out. Also, Union Station over here, another beautiful Beaux-Arts building by Daniel Burnham. If you want to go check that out, one of the city's most beautiful interior spaces. Modernism, back then, is also sometimes called the international style because it was meant to be kind of a universal European style. Again, if there's steel and glass boxes, the thinking is you can put them anywhere and it can be any sort of building you need it to be. It's universal, it's not there to stand out or blend in, it's there to be a space for people to go and do jobs, basically. Postmodernism, on the other hand, a little more location and purpose specific. It was all about context, all about reflecting what was around it, environmentally or architecturally or both. And postmodernism, like the Beaux-Arts style before it, tends to take elements of other styles or older structures and reinterprets them, blends them into something new and different. So our first example of postmodernism today is up to the right here from the 1980s, Gateway number 4. So instead of that plain box shape, you can see now we have a building whose shape follows the curve of the river, so it's being shaped by its environment. We have mirrored glass, which is literally reflecting everything around it, environmentally and architecturally. And you can see the windows are convex, they're bowed outward a bit, giving it a wavy, watery, very river-like view. So postmodernism, contextualism, another name for that, all about reflecting what's around it. And it's still an air-right building as well, you can see. Up to the left real quick, this is just a map of the area. If you get lost, you can look over here. The red bit is this building. That's where we are right now. Finish that over the winter. Up to the right next, another very impressive looking Art Deco building by Graham Anderson, Probst & White. This is our old Chicago main post office, finished in 1921. Might recognize this one as well from Transformers 3, is where Sentinel Prime was being kept. It was also the bank at the beginning of The Dark Knight. It's been in lots of other movies and TV shows over the years, and it is very, very big. Was in fact the largest post office in the world when it was built because Chicago was the mail order capital of the world, thanks to all these big mail order catalog companies like Sears and Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, based out of Chicago. And buy every big Sears catalog on the table growing up, Circle of the Toys you wouldn't get, yeah. And there was a time, I think before any of us were born, when you could order from Sears anything from like a pair of pants to ladies, you could order these arsenic tablets, take for your complexion, get the nice deathly pallor that was all the rage at the time, all the way up to a new house. You'd order a brand new house from the Sears catalog, they'd ship you all the pieces along with what I believe was like a 700-page instruction book, and you just put it together yourself somehow. That actually too clear on how that worked, but a lot of those are actually still standing in various places throughout the country. Order a house from the Sears catalog. So obviously we need a lot of space. Had to send out all the houses and the pans and the arsenic. Oh, not to mention all the catalogs. A lot of those too. Unfortunately, as big as it is, it was also very inefficient. Pretty slow elevators, for example, prone to breakdowns, not the most reliable technology at that point. It had also been retrofitted with it had also definitely been built with trains in mind, so as cars and trucks came into the mix, started to replace the trains as the primary means of transportation and delivery. It got less and less efficient because that's just not what it was built or equipped to deal with. So we needed a newer, more efficient post office, which we finally got in 1996. So just up to the right here is our current, not quite new anymore, Central Post Office, designed by a firm called Knight Architects, Knight with a K, to be the pinnacle of efficiency and modernity. First of all, the floors were color-coded to let them know where the mail was going to need to go, so like cities, suburbs, states, countries, north, west, south, really very well organized. And as you can see, they decided to pretty much just set it up like a parking garage, what it looks like. So instead of worrying about elevator breakdowns and stuff, you can just drive your truck up some ramps, pick up the mail, and drive back out. So pretty good idea, nice, smooth, efficient, modern in theory. In practice, it is important when building things to remember a key phrase you might know already. You want to remember this one probably. Measure twice, cut once. You probably heard it before already, yeah. So opening day, big event, right? A lot of cameras around, a lot of media attention. They realized that the entrances of the building are actually a little bit shorter than the trucks themselves. And that just doesn't really work at all. So the building had to be remodeled pretty extensively. Big delay in opening, goes way over budget. Fortunately, one of the people working that day had the bright idea to just let some air out of the truck tires. They were at least able to get some promo shots of the trucks getting in and out of the building. So they save face a little bit at least. And it's all good now, they fixed it, it works. They pretty well. Up to the left, building it might look kind of familiar. Organic, curvilinear design, city within a city concept, boats, retail apartments. That is Marina City's little sister, basically. It's called River City. Same architect, Bertrand Goldberg, about 20 years later. Up to the right next, even more important, I would say, is the area where the Great Chicago Fire started. Now, in the event there's anyone unfamiliar with the story of the fire, I will summarize it briefly. Sunday night, October 8th, 1871, sometime between 9 and midnight. This older lady, Catherine O'Leary, was in her barn milking her cow. The cow kicked over the lantern she was using. The lantern broke, ignited some straw in the barn. The barn fire spiraled out of control, becoming the Great Chicago Fire. That's the legend. That's the story a lot of people are pretty familiar with. It's what I was taught growing up. There's an old campfire song about it and everything. And that is not true at all. That story was just made up by a reporter because he figured he could sell more newspapers if he gave the city someone to blame the fire on. And Mrs. O'Leary just happened to be the perfect scapegoat at the time. She lived over in this area, which is where the fire started. It actually did start on her property. And she was an Irish Catholic immigrant woman. And the sad truth is that in Chicago and elsewhere, actually, in the 1870s, Irish Catholic immigrants were kind of just who got blamed for stuff, which is nice, not fair, but that is sadly what happened. So even after the reporter admitted to making up the story, didn't matter, damage had already been done, everybody kept blaming her anyway. Now the city did officially exonerate both Mrs. O'Leary and the cow in 1997, by which point I'm fairly certain she'd stopped caring. As to what actually started the fire, we still don't know. There have been a few theories pop up over the years. There was this kind of known shady fella in the neighborhood at the time named Pete. Let's call him Sketchy Pete. Some people think Sketchy Pete snuck into the barn in the middle of the night to gamble with some buddies or steal milk from the cow or whatever happened. Somebody dropped a match or cigar or something. There was a meteor shower that night, did a lot of damage in Wisconsin. Petrigo specifically had this horrible fire that night, but there were a few other pretty bad ones throughout the area. So some people thought maybe some meteorite bits landed over here and that set the barn on fire. Never found any evidence of that though. I like to think it was dueling wizards or possibly a rampaging fire-type Pokemon. Really not sure at this point. Charizard's the obvious choice, or perhaps it involved Fennekin, but only takes a spark to start a fire, so Pikachu is certainly a possibility that we have to face. I don't want to believe it either, but we don't know. Lovely photo up to the left here as we turn around. So take a minute and grab some pictures here while we're turning. Saw Sears Tower there and some others.